About 4 years ago, when I was 12 years old, it was a week before Halloween. My mom was last-minute decorating while I was at school. My school already had a lot of decorations up. It was the end of the day, so I was pretty excited to see how the decorations looked. But I also had to find a costume. On the way home, I stopped at a Halloween store with my friend Sabrina. She was also the person I was going to go trick-or-treating with. She still needed a costume, too. We both had one in mind. I wanted a clown costume and Sabrina wanted a witch costume. When we walked into the store, there weren't many costumes left, but I was able to find a cool-looking clown costume. Sabrina couldn't find one, so she called her parents and asked if they would take her to another store to look. They told her no, and said that every store probably didn't have much left anyway, and that she should have gotten one earlier. She just sighed and hung up. I told her we could go later. She asked if we could go right now. I checked the time and said, no, let's go after dinner. Then we can even ride our bikes. She nodded and we went home. Later that evening, even though we still hadn't eaten dinner, we went out around 6 o'clock. We met at the mall. We lived in a small town, but we still had a mall, though there weren't many stores left in it. We went inside and saw a Spirit Halloween. She found the costume she wanted and was happy. On our way home, we were neighbors and best friends, so we usually walked together. We saw an old truck pulled over with its hazard lights on. Sabrina said we should go over there and make sure everything's okay. No, I said. That's a really bad idea. She didn't listen. She started to bike over to the truck. I grabbed her arm. She tried to get away, but I pulled her to the side away from the truck and let go of her arm. She went to go over there again. I grabbed her arm once more and started to pedal home. Once we were far enough away, I let go. She was angry. She crossed her arms and started pedaling faster so she didn't have to deal with me. She was looking the other way, so she didn't even have to look at me. Biking into a fence won't get you home faster, I said. She didn't say anything, just rolled her eyes. But I laughed. I could tell she didn't want to be next to me, so I just stayed behind her. Then she stopped. No warning, just stopped. She got off her bike and ran. "Where are you going?" I yelled. I'd never seen her run that fast, ever. She didn't respond, just kept running. I grabbed her bike and pedaled after her. She kept running. I stopped in front of her and asked, "What are you doing?" "Didn't you see it?" She said, out of breath. "See what?" I asked. "Someone was in the bushes," she said. Before I could respond, I heard something in the bush. I spun around. My heart was beating extremely fast. My mind was racing. I turned back to look at Sabrina, and then I felt a cold hand grab my ankle. I screamed and sped away. Sabrina got on her bike and sped after me. We went home as quick as possible. We didn't even go to our separate houses. We both went to mine since it was closer. We flung open the door and raced inside. My mom asked if we were okay because we were both so out of breath. We told her what happened and she looked confused but said, "Okay, don't worry. It'll be fine." She gave us each a bowl of soup and told us to sit down. Then she asked if Sabrina's mom was home. Sabrina shook her head and went back to eating her soup. My mom sat down across from us. She could tell we were scared, so she changed the subject and asked if we noticed the Halloween decorations. We both said no at the same time. I said, "We were running so fast we didn't notice anything but running." She chuckled, handed each of us a piece of bread, and then got up and walked over to the window. She shut the curtain. When she turned around, she looked terrified. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Oh, nothing," she said quickly. She seemed like she was trying to think of an answer that wouldn't scare us more than we already were. She sat back down, but after she closed the curtains, I got even more scared. After we finished eating the soup, we walked to my bedroom, the only room with a window that still had the curtain open. I immediately looked out my window. I saw someone crawling past it, like they were trying not to be seen. I jumped backwards, almost knocking over Sabrina. "What was it?" she asked. "Someone just crawled past my window," I said in a shaky voice. Sabrina's eyes widened. She walked to the door of my room. "Where are you going?" I asked. "To go tell your mom someone's out there," she said. I sat down on my bed, anxious about who was outside my window. Sabrina walked back in, looking scared. "What's wrong?" I asked. It took her a while to respond. After about 20 seconds, she finally said, "Someone's at the door, and your mom's gone." Where is she? I asked. I don't know, Sabrina said. We heard banging on the window. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving one. I put my phone in my pocket and started walking toward the front door. Sabrina asked me where I was going, but she still followed. I stood in the living room and yelled, "Mom!" No response. I sighed, walked around the house, but she was nowhere to be found. I took a deep breath and walked to the front door. Are you really going outside? Sabrina asked. I nodded. It's almost dark and there are people outside. That's a horrible idea, Sabrina cried. Says the one who wanted to go up to someone's car, I said. I'm going to look for my mom. She rolled her eyes and followed me outside. We saw the person walking around the house. It was a tall man with black, scraggly hair and dark green eyes. His eyes were half shut, and he was wearing a ripped-up blue t-shirt and old green cargo pants. He looked about late 30s. He looked at us. We ran down the street yelling for my mom. I looked back and saw the man chasing us. I tried to run even faster, but then I tripped and fell into the middle of the street. A car slammed its brakes. I was so embarrassed. The man was still chasing us. I ran across the street, turned around, and sprinted toward my house. When I reached the door, I went to open it, but the handle was stuck. The man's right here, Sabrina screamed. I let go of the handle and ran down the street. We turned and ran through someone's yard. We jumped over their fence and kept running. Sabrina turned her head to see if he was still chasing us, and he was. We hopped another fence and ended up on a different road. We kept running until we hid behind a house, trying to catch our breath. We heard footsteps, so we started to run again. We ended up in town, right in front of a store. We ran inside, straight to the middle of the store so we couldn't be found. Luckily, there were a lot of people inside. We crouched behind a shelf to catch our breath. After about 10 minutes, we finally got up and walked out. We were just happy we could walk home instead of running. It was getting late, so we tried to walk quickly but not run. We were almost home when it became pitch black. We could barely see anything. There were a few streetlights on our road, but not many, so it was hard to see. We walked up to my house and flung the door open. I yelled for my mom, no response. I was worried. I sat down on my bed and called her. She answered. I asked where she was. She said she was at the store buying groceries for tomorrow and picking up a few more Halloween decorations. All I said was, "Okay, see you when you come home," then hung up. I didn't want to worry her by telling her what had just happened. We both sat on my bed. Sabrina called her parents to tell them she would be staying overnight at my house. They didn't argue. They just said okay and hung up. I walked into the kitchen to get a snack. When I walked in, I screamed. I got stuck in the fake cobwebs my mom had put up for Halloween. Sabrina came running to see if I was all right. When she saw me tangled in the cobwebs, she started laughing. She helped me out, and then I walked in, grabbed us both a bowl of chips and a can of soda, and went back to my room. We were sitting on my bed watching TV when we heard the door open. We both jumped. My mom yelled, "I'm home!" "Are you still awake?" We got up and ran to her. I hugged her. She set down what looked like 30 bags. She told us to put away the groceries while she changed into her pajamas. We sighed and started putting everything away. Suddenly, we heard a twig snap outside. We jumped and looked out the kitchen window. We saw a deer walking around. We both sighed in relief. My mom walked into the kitchen and said she could finish putting away the rest of the groceries. I started walking toward my room when I heard her yell, "I have to go back to the store." "Why?" I asked. "I forgot the cottage cheese," she said. Then she asked, "Do you two want to come with me?" We immediately said yes, remembering what had happened earlier. We all got into the car and drove to the store. On the way, I saw that same truck, the one with the hazard lights on. My jaw dropped when I saw who was in the driver's seat. It was the man who had been chasing us. I tapped Sabrina's shoulder and pointed, but I didn't say a word. She looked back at me, eyes wide, not saying anything, just staring in shock. As we drove by, I saw her shaking in fear when the man looked over at us. When we arrived at the store, we gasped. The man was standing there. We were terrified, especially because we were both only 12-year-old girls. We didn't want to get out of the car. I had a bad feeling about it, so I said loudly, "Now that I think about it, I already put away the cottage cheese." "Why didn't you tell me that before we left?" My mom yelled. "I'm sorry," I said. even though I knew there was no cottage cheese. We started to drive home. I felt less worried now that we were leaving the store. When we arrived home, we ran into the house. I was scared but tired at the same time. I still fell asleep pretty quickly. When I woke up, it was time to go to school. I was still scared. I told Sabrina that, and she agreed she was scared too. But she said we still had to go to school, so she didn't bother telling my mom anything. We packed our backpacks and started walking. We didn't see that truck anywhere, so we felt a little less scared. We arrived at school without anything creepy happening. After school, we stopped at the store because Sabrina had forgotten to get a witch broom for her costume. We found one and went home. When we got back to our houses, we decided to try on our Halloween costumes early and show them off to each other. We put them on and walked outside to the sidewalk in front of my house, our meeting spot, since Sabrina lived a little farther down the street. I loved my costume, but Sabrina didn't like hers, though she couldn't say why. She wanted to go back to the Halloween store to see if there was anything else she could add to it. I told her it would look better once she had her witch makeup on. She agreed and walked back to her house. I didn't have the wig, mask, or hammer on when I showed her my clown costume, but it still looked great. About 5 days later, it was Halloween. We had completely forgotten about that creepy man, so we weren't scared about trick-or-treating alone. We had school that day, so when we got home and finished dinner, we immediately changed into our costumes. We went outside to see each other and show how our Halloween outfits looked with the mask and makeup on. She agreed her costume looked better with the makeup. We were super excited, so we immediately headed down the road. When we left, it was about 7:30, and the sun was starting to set. We knocked on door after door. By the time we'd visited about 15 houses, our candy bags were full. Luckily, we weren't too far from my house, so we dropped off our candy, grabbed bigger bags, and went back out, this time heading towards Sabrina's neighborhood. Our bags grew heavy with candy, but we didn't care. It was dark now, and there weren't many trick-or-treaters out anymore, maybe one every 10 minutes. We didn't mind. We wanted to keep going. It was Friday night, so there was no school the next day. Around 10 o'clock, we decided to knock on 5 more doors before heading home. We knocked on the door of a house that looked really old and decrepit. We didn't think anyone was going to answer, but shockingly, someone did. We couldn't see their face because they were wearing a mask. Not a Halloween mask, but a robber-style mask like they didn't want to be seen. We said, "Trick or treat." They nodded and turned around. In a muffled voice, they said, "Come in. You can take the whole bag of candy," and gestured for us to follow. Sabrina willingly walked in. I didn't want to, but I followed her. It smelled like strong air freshener, so strong it felt like it was trying to cover something up. They waved us over again. We followed them as they started walking downstairs. It was dark, and then I realized why they had so much air freshener. The air down there smelled like something rotting, like death. I had a bad feeling about it. I turned and ran back up the stairs. I heard Sabrina call after me. "Where are you going?" "I have a bad feeling about this," I yelled, bolting for the door. I ran outside and waited for her, but she didn't come. About 2 minutes later, I heard her scream, "Olivia!" I ran back into the house. The screaming was coming from the basement. Once more, she screamed my name. I sprinted down the stairs, heart pounding. It was pitch black, but I could hear footsteps coming from another room down there. I walked into that room and saw a silhouette, someone sitting in a chair, and someone else standing beside them. "Sabrina?" I said in a shaky voice. The silhouette in the chair nodded. I reached out and grabbed their hand and pulled. They got up and ran. Suddenly, someone grabbed my arm. I shook it loose and kept running. I still didn't know if I was holding Sabrina's hand or someone completely different. But whoever it was, they kept running too. We ran up the stairs, through the front door, and down the street. I grabbed our candy bags as we passed the porch, since they were still sitting there. Once we were far enough away from the house, I turned to make sure it was Sabrina, and it was. She was holding my hand, looking terrified, but they were still chasing us. We started to run again. The person we's mask began to slip off as they ran, and my heart dropped when I saw his face. It was the same man who had stalked us the week before. I tripped, and the man grabbed me, pulling me back toward the house. I screamed. Sabrina stared in horror, then grabbed my hand and yanked me free. We ran to a nearby house and started banging on the door. An old woman opened it. She said her name was Carla. We raced inside without saying a word and locked the door behind us. The house smelled like cinnamon and pumpkin, like someone had been baking a pie. Carla looked confused and asked what was going on and why we were out so late. We told her everything. She seemed concerned and asked if we needed help. I said no. We just need somewhere to hide for a bit. She nodded, went into the kitchen, and came back with 2 slices of pie. She handed them to us, smiling softly. We thanked her and started eating. It was delicious. After we finished, we thanked her again and started heading for the door. Before we could touch the handle, she said, "Wait." We spun around. "Let me look out the window first, to make sure that man isn't still out there," she said calmly. We nodded. She looked out the window and said, "Okay, no one's out there." We both sighed in relief. "Goodbye, and thank you for the pie." "It was delicious," I said. She smiled, waved, and said, "Bye." We left and ran home. When we finally got back to my house, we went inside and locked the doors. My mom was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing old Halloween movies. We sat down at the table, trying to catch our breath. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Sabrina said, "Let's just trade some candy and forget about it." I nodded. We poured our candy bags out on the table and started sorting. But even while we laughed and traded pieces, my mind kept drifting back to that man. His face, his eyes, the way he chased us down the street. Every sound outside made me flinch. Sabrina noticed. "We're safe now," she said, though I could tell she didn't believe it either. When her mom came to pick her up, we told her everything. She didn't believe us at first. She said it sounded like we'd just gotten spooked by someone in a Halloween mask. But when she saw how shaken we were, she promised to call the police. They arrived about 30 minutes later. We told them everything. The man in the truck, the basement, how we'd escaped. They said they'd check out the house we'd described. The next morning, an officer knocked on our door again. He said, "You girls were lucky. We found the man. He was hiding out in that same house. Turns out he'd been using it as a trap to lure trick-or-treaters." My stomach turned. They said he was the same man who had been reported for stalking kids in nearby neighborhoods for the past 2 years. After they left, I went to Sabrina's house. We didn't talk much. We just sat there, watching cartoons and eating leftover candy. Halloween decorations still hung outside, but somehow they didn't feel fun anymore. That night, when I went to bed, I looked out my window one last time. The street was quiet, peaceful. I was about to close my curtains when I noticed something on the sidewalk, a single piece of candy sitting all by itself. It was the same kind of candy the man had been handing out. I closed my curtains quickly and turned off the light. From then on, we never went trick-or-treating alone again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you would enjoy hearing more spine-chilling stories. A new one will be released every Saturday. If you would like me to read one of yours, you can send it to me bitefear@gmail.com.